Gas prices continue to increase. The ongoing conflict in Iran. What's the reaction from members of Congress? Plus, America's talking. This is the Center Square Daily for Monday, March 9th, 2026. I'm your host, Greg Bishop. U.S. gas prices surged to an average of $3.45 Sunday, according to AAA. That's a 47-cent increase over the week, the sharpest weekly rise since March 2022, when prices jumped 60 cents after Russia invaded Ukraine. That escalating war in Iran has already rattled global markets and driven oil prices to their highest levels since April 2024. If the conflict persists, the strain on the global economy deepens, and so does that burden on U.S. taxpayers. But that costs hitting drivers and taxpayers in the pocketbook right now. Sunday nights, that crude oil on the U.S. domestic West Texas index at $108 a barrel, and it continued to climb. Just taking a look at the price of oil per barrel over the past 3 months so far this year: January, $64.60 per barrel; February, $66.96 per barrel. As you can see, that jump in March, just the few days we've got here, $98.64 per barrel, according to macrotrends.net. Now, this is due to several factors, including OPEC plus countries' production cutting because of the Iranian conflict, and 70% reduction in cargo shipments through the Strait of Hormuz, astronomical insurance costs for shipping companies, and future trades on the New York Stock Exchange, all being impacted by that ongoing conflict. In the U.S., markets responding again with oil futures topping $108 per barrel for April. Now, that national average of $3.40 a gallon at the pump, it's coming into more focus at the pump for diesel drivers at $4.60 a gallon, with both expected to climb. Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan posting that on Sunday night. And as you can see, the regular average costs $2.90. The current average, that was from last month, the current average is now $3.47. President Donald Trump explicitly asked about this on a flight over the weekend. Here's what he had to say.
Are you worried about gas prices right now?
No, I'm not. This is a short excursion into something that should have been done for 47 years. 47 years it's taken to do this, and no president had the guts to do it.
So again, the president doesn't seem concerned about those increased prices, hinting that it's short-term pain for long-term gain. He said on social media, short-term oil prices, which will drop rapidly when the destruction of Iran nuclear threat is over, is a very small price to pay for USA. He went on to say, only fools would think differently. Again, the president on social media. The Center Square reports that President Trump and Secretary of War Pete Hegseth have laid out 4 military objectives in Iran. They want to destroy Iran's missile capabilities. They want to neutralize its navy. They want to prevent the development of nuclear weapons. And they want to ensure that the Iranian regime can't direct terrorism beyond its borders. But in addition to the global economy and the costs of that war hitting taxpayers in the pocketbook, one analyst telling the Center Square the military operations are costing taxpayers $1 billion a day. Brett Rowland reporting that Trump's already looking to boost military spending. Trump previously proposed a $1.5 trillion budget for the Department of War, a 60% increase over existing levels. And on Friday, the nation's largest defense contractors agreed to quadruple production of the exquisite class weaponry. That's according to the president posting on social media. To talk more about this ongoing operation and the taxpayer toll is the Center Square's Therese Boudreaux. Therese, what's behind that cost to taxpayers for that ongoing military operation in Iran?
Well, I mean, the as you said, some analysts are saying that it's up to nearly $1 billion per day, and a lot of that is just due to the weaponry, munitions, equipment. Even the planes that have been shot down, those are very expensive. And then just on Friday, President Trump announced that 650 million worth of bombs have been sent to Israel to help in this conflict. So, war is expensive, or, if you want to take Trump's words, it's a short-term excursion, but a lot of lawmakers, at least, are seeing this as war, and it seems to have the costs of war. So, the longer this goes on, the more expensive it's going to be.
Seen a toll on U.S. personnel, several being killed in this, and the president essentially suggesting that there are going to be more U.S. soldier fatalities in all of this. So obviously, when we talk about the taxpayer cost, we have to recognize that human toll as well, and the human toll over in Iran. And any potential collateral damage that there is in this ongoing conflict. But Therese, members of Congress have to be reacting to this. I mean, there have already been a couple of war powers resolution votes that have not advanced. But what are you hearing from members of Congress?
Well, essentially what's going on is that Republicans, most of them, have all gone on board with this. At first there was some uncertainty whether some Republicans would see this as an infringement on Congress's rights to declare war, but they've mostly fallen in line behind the president. Democrats, however, except for Senator John Fetterman and a couple others, are universally opposed. They say that there is not enough evidence of an immediate need to attack Iran. They say that President Trump overstepped his authority by authorizing those strikes. He did notify the so-called Big Eight of Congress about what he was doing, but Congress never voted to authorize that. Now, some are saying that at this point, given that the war powers resolutions in both the Senate and the House failed, that at this point Congress has sort of authorized it by not opposing it. Again, I don't think many Democrats take that view, but there's a lot of reactions with that 650 million bombs package that was sent. You had the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee saying, condemning that. You have some Democrats who are saying that they'll bring up a war resolution again in 60 days if this is still going on. So it's very controversial. And there's so much talk about it. And I think Congress at this point, Democrats in Congress are feeling that there's not much they can do, but they are still trying to stop it.
The taxpayer cost obviously is important with the country's national debt and the ongoing costs of that. And, annual appropriations having to be made to that growing national debt and what a new global conflict could mean. Therese, there's got to be political ramifications from this, right? I mean, we're in an election year. How do you see members of Congress discussing that aspect of this?
Well, a lot of Republicans are really trying to sell it as this is a national security issue and only President Trump, he's the only one who has the guts to do it, essentially. That this is justified, that this is in America's best interests. Democrats, of course, are taking the opposite tactic. They're trying to convince voters that this is something that's unnecessary, that's unauthorized, and that is hurting taxpayers, hitting their pocketbooks. So again, like you said, it's an election year. We're going to have those midterm elections in the fall of 2026. And there's a lot of polls that are showing that most Americans are opposed to our intervention in Iran. But there are some coming out on the Republican side that show that a lot of Republicans are kind of warming to the idea. But I think that lawmakers on both sides of the aisle are really recognizing that what's happening now policy-wise, whether that's the DHS shutdown from Democrats or whether that's the Iran war conflict by the Republicans, that can really sway voters. So voters who may have voted Republican or may have voted Democrat in the last election could have really changed their mind by now. I mean, with this second Trump administration, so much has happened just within the past, few months, let alone the past year.
Past 12, yeah, right, exactly.
Exactly.
Right. And all of these headlines, mad rush for people, it's hard to keep up. Even you and I being in this news space, right? We get paid to cover what's going on and to listen to these long protracted hearings and to pour through news releases and to look at all of the social media messages from members of Congress or state legislators. We get paid to do this. The taxpayers out there, they don't. They get paid to go to work and put food on their table. So obviously, it's important that we get them the latest on what's happening, especially when it comes to what could be an ongoing conflict in Iran. But plenty of other things going on as well, Therese. And as that conflict continues in Iran, you got the partial government shutdown that's still going on. The Department of Homeland Security funding bill. What's the status?
The status is that we are at the same place that we were 3 weeks ago when this happened. There's reports that there have been talks going on behind the scenes between the White House and Democrats. This is the second time in only a few months that Democrats have refused to fund either all at last time or this time parts of the government due to policy demands. Last time it was healthcare, and this time it's immigration enforcement. We saw those protests in the Twin Cities area of Minnesota that led to the killing of 2 American citizens. And so Democrats think that they have the American people on their side. Now, this shutdown has not really made that many waves because it's unlike the previous one, which was a all of government shutdown. This is just of DHS and the agencies under that. But that doesn't just impact immigration and customs enforcement. In fact, ICE received $50 billion from the One Big Beautiful Bill that Republicans passed. And to put that in perspective, their funding in this last remaining appropriations bill, funding DHS, for the year would have been about $10 billion. So they are set, and they're not impacted by the shutdown at all, despite what Democrats are doing and despite what they say they're fighting for. But the agencies that are being impacted are FEMA, the Coast Guard, Secret Service, TSA, and they're still carrying out essential operations. But we're seeing actually recently what's happening with TSA starting to happen is what we had last time, where the agents who aren't getting paid are taking work off so that they can actually do some part-time jobs on the side so that they can still put food on the table. So we actually, today, we have Brett Rowland is going to be reporting at the Center Square on how TSA wait times have very much lengthened. There are some airports that are telling Americans to possibly wait up to 5 hours before their flights to budget that time.
And you got to think, spring break's coming up. There's going to be a lot of people looking to, maybe get out of some northern parts of the country to find some sunshine and some waves in the southern part of the country. And best and most economical way to do that is to fly. And if there's going to be an ongoing crunch at airports, you could see the pressure mounting on members of Congress to act. And like you said, the last government shutdown, the much fuller government shutdown that happened at the tail end of last year, that lasted 41 days before that. 43, thank you. 43 days before that pressure started really compounding on members of Congress. Do you think that that's going to happen again here, especially if it's members of Congress who are finding delays at airports to get back and forth between Washington, D.C. and their home district?
So right now, Democrats are saying that they will not fold. They've been saying that for the past few weeks. But we have seen historically, just like we saw with the last shutdown that lasted 43 days, that the side that instigates the shutdown never gets their demands, or they get a fraction, a sliver of what they're demanding. And so the shutdown has to end sometime, right? I mean, we'll see how long that is. So no matter what Democrats say, it has to end. And from all the White House is saying, it's not going to end completely on Democrats' terms. They might get a couple of the demands that they're making for reforms to immigration enforcement. But some of the things that they're very much demanding, for instance, having agents get extra warrants, a judicial warrant on top of an immigration court warrant in order to enter private property, or to have them agents display ID. Those Republicans in the White House are very much hard nose on. But Democrats are saying they're not going to fold until they get all of their demands, which we reported on in the Center Square what those are. So it's hard to predict how long it will last. But the cynical view is that when members of Congress start really feeling the impacts, maybe enough will fold. But we really don't know. And, it's been 3 weeks already. Hopefully this will not turn into another 43-day shutdown. But it really depends. We have a very partisan Congress, and there's a lot going on right now.
And you got to also work in the question that members of the Senate are going to have to take up soon, and that's Kristi Noem's replacement, Markwayne Mullin. How do you think that's going to play into all of this?
Well, Democrats' response has been essentially, that's a good first step, but that's not going to sway us. It's quite possible that when this shutdown does end, it ends similar to how the previous one did, where you have just enough Senate Democrats who say that, okay, we have enough partial assurances to where we get a little bit of our demands, or we've seen a little bit of movement. So at this point, we're just going to help Republicans open up the government because the benefits of doing that are better than what we're experiencing right now. So again, it's hard to predict, but I think American people are hoping it's not going to take much longer.
And we know that you guys and the Washington, D.C. team are going to be on top of it at thecentersquare.com. Therese, one final thing, a big issue for taxpayers, a big issue for farmers is the Farm Bill. As you've reported at thecentersquare.com, some changes possible, but what, if any, are expected to be in that updated Farm Bill?
So that Farm Bill, it's going to be the first time, if this passes, in 8 years that Congress has passed one. So normally these cover about 5 years. They've just kind of been extending the previous one. So this is something that farmers and other stakeholders really want to happen. The Farm Bill covers so many things. It covers crop insurance. It covers SNAP, although this one covers a bit less of that due to SNAP being addressed in the one big beautiful bill. It covers, different loans that farmers get. It covers rural energy and hospital and water programs. There's so much that's covered in it. So we don't have an official estimate from the Congressional Budget Office yet, but the House Agricultural Chairman said in a markup of that bill that it includes about $1.3 trillion worth of policies. So it's very high stakes. Some of the changes that we might see if this passes, which Democrats are very much against, include there are some things that would decrease regulations on PFAS chemicals, that would shield corporations in many cases from lawsuits over pesticides, personal injury lawsuits, by standardizing the safety labeling of those pesticides kind of at a federal level. Again, there's more reporting on that at the Center Square. And then there's also another thing Democrats don't like, and it would limit federal investments in solar, so-called solar farms on farmland and forest land. So it is a bipartisan bill, and we did have it coming out of the committee. We had some Democrats vote for it, but there are some who are very much against it. But again, high stakes. So I think most people are hoping that it's bipartisan enough, that it's important enough to where, on this at least, Congress will act bipartisanly and get it passed.
Therese Boudreaux, thank you so much for your reporting, and people can keep up with that and more. Go to thecentersquare.com. Now it's time for America's Talking, and we're going to take a look at what's going on in Washington State. The bill there would let an unelected state board effectively remove an elected sheriff from office, and that was passed by the House of Representatives in Washington State in the wee hours of Friday. The Center Square's Carlene Johnson reports for nearly 8 hours, Republicans offered dozens of amendments to the measure, which were rejected by the majority party Democrats ahead of final passage just before 1:30 in the morning Washington time. 4 Democrats joined every Republican in opposing the bill, 54-42. Democratic Washington State Representative Roger Goodman, he talked about why he thinks the bill is good.
This bill will build confidence and community trust between community and law enforcement, especially our law enforcement leaders. Our law enforcement leaders should be subject to the same eligibility requirements, qualifications, and accountability measures as those who work for them, or maybe even greater, a higher bar. This bill provides that the core duty of the sheriff is to enforce is to uphold the U.S. Constitution, uphold and enforce the state Constitution, and enforce the laws duly enacted by this legislature.
Went on to say that they also need to enforce the laws that the Washington Supreme Court upholds. But the bill would also raise the minimum age of sheriff candidates from 18 to 25. It would require at least 5 years of full-time law enforcement experience and mandate background checks and certification from the Criminal Justice Training Commission. That commission would revoke certification for misconduct, leading to elected sheriffs being removed from office in Washington state. Carlene Johnson also reporting at the Center Square that opponents came out hard against the measure, arguing that it strips voters of their right to elect a sheriff of their choice. Pierce County Sheriff Keith Swank, he told the Center Square he thinks the measure is all about control.
My big concern is it takes away the right of the people to elect their sheriff. This is a weapon used by the Democrats to be able to control the sheriffs. Democrats control, as you know, the state House, the state Senate. Every statewide elected official is a Democrat. They control every single thing here in the state except for sheriffs. And now with the passage of this bill, they believe they'll be able to control sheriffs. They'll be able to decertify them, remove them from office, appoint the people they want to have in those positions, and then they have complete control over everybody.
During floor debates, Johnson reports Republicans referred to the bill as the, quote, get rid of Keith Swank bill, arguing Democrats were using legislation to remove a sheriff who has wide support from the majority of his constituents. Kitsap County Sheriff candidate Rick Coos, he said the issue is worth fighting for.
This is the thing for me that kind of like, what is the hill you'll die on? What is something that you'll fight with everything you have for? And having studied the Constitution, both the U.S. and the state Constitution, and realizing that I took an oath, in the military and then as a deputy sheriff to our state and federal Constitution, like this is it. To me, it's clear in writing that this is what I will stand up and fight for.
Meanwhile, in other law enforcement news, Seattle Police Chief Sean Barnes, he says that any police officer who violates that city's new policy requiring documentation of U.S. immigration and customs enforcement actions, including video recording, will be subject to disciplinary screenings. The Center Square's Randy Diamond reports. Barnes said that he would offer an officer the chance to talk with him before making a final decision on any permanent discipline. Barnes has the power to fire police officers in Seattle. For the latest on what's happening in Washington state, be sure to get the newsletter in your inbox at thecentersquare.com and find Washington in Focus daily here with the Center Square. We'll be right back with more. Welcome back to the Center Square Daily. I'm your host, Greg Bishop, for March 9th, 2026. Now let's put Illinois in focus. Early voters across the state have been heading to their county election offices to cast early ballots for weeks, but Election Day is just around the corner, just over a week before the polls close. One of the big primary races everyone's watching across the state is the race for the Republican nomination to take on incumbent Governor J.B. Pritzker. I ran into Aaron Delmar. He's the running candidate for former state senator Darren Bailey. Delmar was at a gun range in northern Illinois. He is the running mate of Bailey, who ran against Pritzker 4 years ago and lost. Bailey had a different lieutenant governor candidate 4 years ago. Before a potential rematch, Bailey and Delmar, they must fight to get through that race for the primary where there's 4 candidates, Bailey being one of them. You also have businessman Rick Heidner on the ballot, analyst Ted Dabrowski on the ballot, and DuPage County Sheriff James Mendrick on the ballot. I asked Delmar over the weekend about their confidence levels heading into the final home stretch and whether or not they're going to come out on top.
I'm cautiously optimistic. Our polling shows us with a very strong lead. Our message is showing a very strong lead. Nowhere in Illinois history have you had a team like Darren and I, where you have somebody that is the intersection of Clay County and Cook County, rural Illinois and the city of Chicago, combining together for one team, for one goal, and that's to take our state back. And this is a tremendous opportunity that we can do so much more for the people of Illinois. We have the understanding of how government works. We've done it through the grassroots movement. Just from our petitions, we had 14,400 people, volunteers, regular, average day people that signed our petition to get us on the ballot. That's what a grassroots campaign looks like. We're not having paid canvassers like J.B. Pritzker are standing in front of Walmart trying to beg for signatures. The people want us, and it's all over the state, and the opportunity is there. We just need to go, and we need to work hard and get it.
On the issues, affordability expected to dominate the race. Last week in Springfield, Pritzker was asked about whether the minimum wage should be increased. Right now, it's at $15 an hour in Illinois.
Very important that we raise the minimum wage. I believe that we need to have a living wage for people, and it's something that we always ought to be considering. How do we put more money in people's pockets? You want to make life more affordable for people, help them get a raise.
Delmar said the real affordability issue is taxes are too high in Illinois.
He wants to increase the sales tax. He wants to increase income tax and making it unaffordable more than it currently is in Illinois. That's how you lift the burden of the taxes from people. Give them that opportunity to thrive in Illinois, not just survive. You know, as a small business owner here in Illinois, I was able to build my business and scale it nationwide. It wasn't because of Illinois. It was in spite of Illinois. That is the way that I think we can lift all ships, and we can start bringing people back because we make Illinois competitive. When you lose 250,000 people that don't come back and you lose that congressional seat, you lose your voice in Washington, but you also lose these people and their tax revenue. We could turn this ship around if we start bringing people back and spreading that burden across more people instead of those that just can't pick up and leave like others.
According to Wallet Hub, in a report they released recently, the land of Lincoln has the highest state and local taxes and the highest annual tax rates on median households, coming in 53% higher than the U.S. average. The lowest tax rates were found in Alaska, Delaware, and Wyoming. So it'll be interesting to see what other issues surface, but of course we've got to get through that primary. There is another Republican debate set for this evening in Northbrook, but only 3 of the 4 candidates will be there. Dabrowski, Heidner, and Mindrick set to participate in that event hosted by Students for Illinois. Bailey is skipping the debate to attend a campaign event in Pekin. Primary election day, Tuesday next week, March 17th. Meanwhile, the Illinois Senate, they're returning to session this week, and they've got a bill deadline for Friday to see what kind of measures are going to come out of Senate committees. All of this while the House also has some deadlines on their calendar, but they're not in this week. They'll come back next week, and then it's going to be several weeks of busy activity in both the House and Senate as they march towards that May 31st deadline to get a budget passed. In other headlines for Illinois, the Obama Presidential Center scheduled to open with a series of events June 18th to the 21st in Chicago. The project was delayed several times since its 2021 groundbreaking, and estimated construction costs rose from $350 million to at least $830 million. A dedication ceremony is planned June 18th, followed by the public opening June 19th, and a community celebration June 20th and the 21st. Find those headlines and many more at thecentersquare.com. From my studios in Central Illinois, I'm Greg Bishop, and join us back here Tuesday for more stories impacting you, the taxpayer, from across the country, only with the Center Square Daily.